Yeah, g'day everyone. If some of you have met me, you'd kind of know that, well, you either think I'm crazy or I like to look on the silver lining in life. And yeah, I just come back from 2 weeks in the US, and I got in Monday and I wasn't feeling great, and I don't get jet lag. And then yeah, steadily went downhill, and I don't even remember having glass in my throat. So I did a COVID test. I was supposed to be in Auckland Wednesday and Thursday presenting at Definity, but yeah, obviously I couldn't. And unfortunately, I had to isolate, well, sort of isolate, with a whole bunch of teenagers. And I did wonder if they were just doing that so they could hang out at my place, because, yeah, it's a cool place. Anyway, um, I am talking to you today on applying FinOps to Microsoft Dynamics 365 or D365. And basically this came about because I wanted to give people a strategic look on, how organizations can bring, cost, accountability, visibility, and optimization practices that I've been doing in a whole range of other areas, right? So I'm a cloud engineer, DevOps engineer at heart, but I wanted to bring that to D365 environments, So looking at, whether it's finance and ops, sales, customer service, field service, or any combination of that. And so I really wanted to bring something, that when people think about FinOps, they think about, just pure cloud infrastructure, VMs, elasticity, an Azure SQL database, how we can scale stuff and things, and of course, cost anomaly detection. So hopefully in this session, I'll show you how FinOps applies directly to D365, why it matters, and specific, things you can do to create measurable savings without compromising capability. All right, who am I? That's me when I don't not ill. I spent many years. I used to have the years up there, but it makes me feel really old. I'm a DevOps person at heart, and helping people understand DevOps, especially with databases, is actually a personal passion of mine, which is why I do a lot of community education speaking. I do run two companies. My company Morphit, based here in NZ, helps people, do data, cloud, DevOps, AI, all that kind of stuff. I love to tune SQL databases. In fact, just been working on a recent engagement where I tuned SSIS packages. I don't know if you know SSIS packages, but SQL Server Integration Services packages, and took something that was running for 11 hours and got it running to within 3 minutes, which is kind of cool. Anyway, and actually that sort of leads into this. I am a technologist who understands business value. I'm a bit of a geek, and I like technology, but I really like linking it to business value, hence why I'm speaking at this event, albeit from my shed. And, every action that I do, be it tuning indexes, helping people, with infrastructure as code in their cloud environments, or implementing new ways of working through Kanban, I intrinsically link that to business value. I'm a double Microsoft MVP, so I'm a data platform MVP, as well as an AI platform MVP, which I got awarded this year. And yeah, if you've heard me speak or heard me in live, I do say the word make stuff go. So I do have a startup based out of Australia called Make Stuff Go, which helps people with cost optimization. Anyway, what I'm going to do today, I'm going to talk about why FinOps matters for D365, introducing it for business apps, talk around the cost layers, licensing, all that kind of stuff, some common cost pitfalls, where our spend might hide, and around, Power Automate, Logic apps, and all that kind of stuff. Some cost control strategies about Power BI and Fabric. If you do Fabric wrong, it's going to cost you a heck of a lot of money. And culture. As a DevOps person, to me, the most fundamental thing of what we do in business is around culture. It is not around technology or tools. People in culture will beat tools anytime if you want to be successful, because what underpins that is process. And of course, some practical next steps. So let's start with the why. So D365 programs, often grow organically. So we have new modules, new integrations, new Power Apps, some additional Power BI dashboards, all those kind of things. And of course, that leads into more licenses. And what starts as a clean, CRM implementation or ERP often becomes a complex ecosystem that spans, software as a service, data analytics, and of course, custom workloads. And without, our DevOps discipline, costs can drift big time without visibility. Now, most organizations have at least some sort of FinOps practices for their Azure infrastructure. And I'll talk about what FinOps is very soon, because the thing is, biz app teams often assume that, software as a service can be a fixed cost, which is no longer correct. We can scale our apps and stuff, which means that, our costs can scale in many invisible ways, user licenses, Dataverse storage, AI builder usage, Power Automate runs, environment counts, and of course, connectors with an Azure. So FinOps matters because it gives us that shared language. It creates a culture and an operating model where teams ask, who owns this cost? Why is it growing? How do we forecast it? How do we measure value? And, this gives us a structure, a schema, and again, culture for bringing all of us together in terms of one common goal, which is, to reduce costs and run our resources optimally and efficiently. For D365 and Biz Apps, the biggest benefit is that FinOps connects business decisions to financial outcomes. So again, that business delivery thing. So when a department, requests 200 new users or a new environment, just in case, FinOps turns that into transparent consumption-based thinking. We'll find cost savings not through cutting functionality, but also through right sizing, through using automation, and also cleaning up technical sprawl. A classic one I was working with was where a client had implemented all of the true DevOps things within their environment, and they had a QA environment, quality assurance environment, that was doing all the testing so that, their production system was humming quite nicely. However, they had technical sprawl because when they were spinning up their QA environment, they'd spin it up, do testing, then tear it down. They weren't tearing down everything. And they had 360 logic apps lying around that they had inadvertently, they'd spun them up, used them, but didn't delete them. And this came about because I was doing cost management exercise with them and noticed that the test subscription in Azure was way more than production. So anyway, that's part of why FinOps is good. It gives us that visibility. And again, it, in short, it turns our environments, for D365 from reactive bill paying into proactive governance and gives us value optimization. So there are three sort of major cost layers in D365, and we have our SaaS licensing. So this includes finance ops, HR, field service, and so on. And the number one FinOps lever we can use here is entitlement analysis. Are people assigned the right correct license? Are there dormant users? And, typically license optimization produces 10 to 25% savings as we do that first review. And of course, dataverse and storage cost. Every D365 environment has data, file and log storage, and as those environments scale, that becomes one of our largest recurring costs. Without, life cycle policies, old records and attachments, can accumulate endlessly. And so again, FinOps gives us the tools to govern our retention windows, archive to cheaper blob storage, and avoid for paying, unnecessary capacity. So then as we move down, in fact, sorry, I realized that I should have some of the layers here. That might help, eh? So as we move into sort of integrations and analytics, so this is where we've got Azure and Power Platform. We've got our Power Automate flows, Logic apps, Azure SQL staging layers, data lake links, you name it, custom APIs. These all incur operational costs. And Power BI data sets cost money through those refresh cycles, memory consumption, and per capacity models. And the key point is D365 spend isn't just SaaS. It's a multi-layered ecosystem requiring visibility across licensing, storage, compute, and data movement. So again, FinOps gives us a framework to measure each layer and understand which workloads deliver value. There are some, when we talk about FinOps and D365, the very first step is shining a light on where the money quietly leaks out. Across dozens of D365 estates I've reviewed, finance and ops, customer engagement, and especially Dataverse and Power Platform, these cost pitfalls show up time and time again. And the first big one is over-licensed users. Many orgs end up paying for full finance, sales, and customer service licenses for people who actually only perform light tasks. So, approvals, lookups, or basic interactions. And so, we should look at what that activity is for our users, and can they be shifted to activity or team member licenses without, impacting productivity. And so again, FinOps starts by asking, does this user truly need the license that we're paying for? And the next one, kind of gave an example, sandbox sprawl. So over time, project vendors, testing cycles, leave behind a trail of unused sandboxes, and if we haven't done our job completely right, those could be in expensive tiers. And so, where we have, Power Platform admin layers, teams can forget that these environments exist. Each sandbox, carries storage, compute, and integration overhead. And so, as mentioned before, these can accumulate quietly. There's another sort of blind spot where, when tables grow unchecked, attachment logs, audit tables, we might have duplicated Power BI models. This is going to drive up our storage charges, and obviously it slows our refresh operations. And so, as I mentioned before, we want to look at lifecycle policies where we might archive, purge, compress, or even shift to lower storage. High API call volume. So flows or logic apps that fire on every field update or integration that poll, every minute, just in case, create unnecessary API consumption, and, they can sometimes trigger premium license escalations. And finally, so we need to look over this. And, many organizations simply have no single owner for spend. And that's quite a key point as well. And so, the problem is without accountability and oversight, waste becomes normal. Whereas applying FinOps practices, we restore ownership, visibility, and intentionality to our cost governance in D365. So, if you've heard of FinOps, you might think, oh yeah, cool, Hamish. It's all about Azure. It's for, VMs, storage accounts, my network egress, so data coming out of Azure going somewhere. It might involve reserved instances and all those classic cloud optimization levers and buttons that people like myself push. And is where FinOps, or financial operations as a principle, started, or as a discipline even. Because what it did was it brought financial accountability to rapid scaling, and also looking at consumption cloud-based services. As organizations adopt D365 and wider business application stack, a new opportunity exists for us. And so the thing is, these systems are increasingly the backbone of finance ops, supply chain, customer engagement, you name it. Yet, very few people actually apply FinOps discipline to them. And so applying FinOps to business apps extends the same core principles, right? So we want visibility, we want optimization, and of course, accountability. And this is very true in software as a service in our data layers of our platform. And so the first pillar is, license right sizing. Our licenses are one of the largest controllable cost centers. The next pillar is around usage governance. This is about understanding which environments exist, who is using them, and whether they need to remain online. We need to look at our data lifecycle optimization, because our data can accumulate rapidly. And so again, without retention, archiving, model optimization, and cleanup policies, our costs can escalate and also performance suffer. Finally, integration optimization ensures that our automations, our APIs, our flows, logic apps are running efficiently. And of course, the basis of this talk, within cost boundaries. And so, this brings financial accountability into digital operations. And I said it before, right? FinOps stands for financial operations, that bridge bringing us together. And this ensures that, D365 delivers maximum value without unexpected cost growth. So how can we license how can we optimize our licenses? So again, this is one of the highest return on investment FinOps activities for D365. Many organizations overspend purely because license assignments drift over time. Sorry, just having a drink. When a user changes roles, moves departments, or leaves the org, their license may remain active. And I've seen this time and time again. And we need to look at, there we go. We need to look at the utilization of our licenses. So maybe, measure how often users log in, what entities they touch, whether they use premium features. And in fact, I'm working on a really cool project at the moment for Power BI licensing that looks at the using AI to look at the profile usage, query usage of users, and then looking to see if their rights and assignments are appropriate. And of course, there's other ways. So we do want to do role-based licensing, align licenses to business roles instead of ad hoc assignments. And of course, Looking at seasonal licensing patterns, some roles are seasonal or project based. And again, we can use FinOps to not only capture this information, but also forecast the needs. When we map roles to usage and usage to spend, license waste becomes really, really visible. And most orgs see immediate reductions just by eliminating low activity users or switching them to a different license. FinOps, turns a fixed cost into a dynamic spend category that can be optimized repeatedly. And it isn't just about reducing functionality, not at all. It's actually about ensuring that people have the right license, not the most expensive one. I talked about environment sprawl. And, environments are often one of the most overlooked cost drivers. And, we will typically have, production, a UAT, user acceptance test environment, some form of sandbox environments, maybe a training and an integration one. And, we need to ensure that these are right-sized, so which particular tier they're running on. And the thing is, FinOps, again, helps us answer the questions. Do we need this environment? How often is it used? Does it need full data, masked subsets? Should it auto suspend during off hours? And, coming at this from a sort of a DevOps perspective means that we could possibly provision and destroy environments and resources around, a schedule. And so, there's a whole heap of things that we can do here around, automated refresh policies, tagging environments by department or outcome. This is a major for me because tagging in Azure or any cloud provider, but hopefully it's Azure, is, oh my goodness, sorry about that. I have some sheep out there. How to do a presentation in New Zealand when a sheep hits the shed. I wish this was more international. Where was it going? Tagging our environments. People overlook it. They think it's hard, and it is, right? Getting the hierarchy is a thing that people struggle with. But my goodness, if you do tag your resources, then we can bubble it up. We can make sure that the costs are aligned correctly. And to departments or outcomes, we might have, that training environment. So I guess my message here is around environments often create hidden recurring costs. And so again, we want to make the costs visible, but we also want to make them manageable. Dataverse storage can be one of our biggest cost surprises, and a number of times where I have, found some unknowns, especially in larger estates, because as our organization grows, so does our storage for cases, orders, invoices, workflows, you name it, audit data, which hopefully we do. And so again, we want to ask the questions: what data is business critical? What can be archived? What needs to be kept for compliance? And what belongs in cheaper storage tiers? And I talked about it before, masked data subsets, right? So we may need production-like data. We will hopefully be masking it, but do we need 50 million rows, or do we actually only need maybe 5,000 representative rows for those lower environments? And so a couple of suggestions here. Move our attachments to Azure Blob Storage, link them via virtual tables, apply retention policies again to logs, audit records, and historical data. Look at, do we have data set duplication, and optimize our refresh frequencies, because some data sets don't need, 8 refreshes per day. And so again, we want to remove unnecessary data and avoid capacity-based pricing escalations. That what I'm saying here is it's not about deleting valuable data. It's actually about storing it where it belongs and avoiding, again, premium tier storage for low value records. And that might involve, doing an archive strategy where we put, so instead of having 7 years of data, in our hot storage or in database, we may actually move it down into cold storage, right? So move 6 years over there, but leave 1 year, because we know that our apps only need last year's records like that. If we need to jump out and trawl through the other 6 years worth, that's fine. Again, FinOps is more about having a conversation about our costs and coming up with a strategy that fits with the business and aligns with what, automation and operational efficiencies we can do. Power BI and Fabric cost control. So I'm a data platform MVP, but I'm also colorblind. So I don't do much with Power BI, or if I do, it's normally bar charts that are yellow and blue, because I can tell those ones. But yeah, I don't do much with Power BI. Fabric, that sort of brought me to the table now that it integrates with source control, and you can do some SQL database stuff in there. But yeah, when we look at D365 through a FinOps lens, one of the biggest hidden cost areas is actually reporting. And so this might be Power BI or Fabric. And so the problem is with our D365 implementations, they unintentionally drive up analytic costs through dataset duplication, overly frequent refresh schedules, and of course, misaligned capacity choices. And so, dataset duplication is a common anti-pattern. And so, this is where different teams often create their own semantic models pointing to the same tables and data, which multiplies our storage consumption and can double or triple our refresh workloads. This not only increases the compute cost on, if you're using Fabric capacity, but it also increases load on the underlying D365 environment. And so our best practice when looking at this through a FinOps lens is to consolidate into shared, certified data sets, or maybe to use a lakehouse to centralize our ingestion and let those semantic models reference the same underlying tables and what have you. Excuse me. When, the thing is, we need to start treating these like we do other things. So we might introduce KPIs like cost per data set refresh, which helps teams actually see the financial impact in a measurable way. And I often try and gamify this. I worked in a company where we used to look at monthly cloud spend, admittedly not D365, but we had a competition to see who could, optimize their stuff, and there were prizes and a leaderboard. It kind of worked. But yeah, anyway, we can see the financial impact in a measurable way. And, creating dashboards and showing these things is really good, because, again, it's all about the visibility. As I mentioned before, logic app costs and stuff, again, we need to look at our integration layer, which includes, Power Automate flows, logic apps, any custom API integrations we're doing, and of course, those high volume data movements across, Azure and external systems. So, that egress, data out of Azure or any cloud provider into something else. The thing is, these workloads don't always show up as an actual D365 spend, but they 100% contribute to the total cost to operate our business apps and our business. Oh, I could hear myself. Is that really what I sound like?
Trevor.
I'm going to mute you, Trev. There you go, bro. Let's start with API. Sorry. It's the COVID. Let's start with API throttling versus cost. So throttling isn't just, it's not about a performance problem. It's actually a FinOps signal. If we see repeated throttling of our API calls, it often means we have too many parallel flows, redundant polling triggers, or chatty integrations. And so reducing call volume by redesigning those workflows saves both consumption cost and also operational risk, because if we can, have event-based triggers and consolidation of jobs, turns what could be API abuse into API efficiency. I speak of this from personal experience with my startup, because I'm a startup, we have no money. We were looking at our AI services costs, and whilst not D365s, very relevant, and we noticed that we were making 10 calls to APIs, and of course getting charged. It's not much to begin with, but when you're making 10 calls, when you could have actually only made 2, and so, because we noticed our costs were going up and up. And so, again, we consolidated that and saved costs. And of course, looking at logic apps. So they're billed per action. So a poorly designed workflow can generate thousands of chargeable executions in a day. Whilst they might be only a cent or two, multiply that by thousands, and we got a wee bit of a problem. So FinOps here means measuring our action counts, identifying high frequency workloads, or workflows rather, and reducing the number of unnecessary steps, loops, conditions, polling triggers, that kind of thing. Or even simple changes like switching from every 1 minute polling to event-driven webhooks can drive our costs down dramatically. And of course, with Power Automate, per flow plans, per usage plans, and pay as you go all result in different cost behavior. And so many orgs overspend because flows are split unnecessarily across multiple licensing. So if we can consolidate these, merge related automations and clean up, duplicate flows, we can reduce our spend by, 20 to 40%. And of course, as a DevOpsologist, I have to talk about observability. So where we can track high volume automations, measure flow failures, and monitor our API consumption. That means that if we have a FinOps driven view, it helps us understand which integrations deliver value and which ones are just simply consuming our money. Alrighty. I think about Azure consumption for D365 around, logic apps, what we might be doing with Azure SQL for staging. We might be using Azure Data Factory. Of course, if we're doing API stuff and things, we should be having some form of API management. And all of these things, right, that we have, we've got to use FinOps so that we can align our business app teams with the Azure teams, so those costs aren't siloed. And so the goal is to understand which Azure workloads support which business functions that we have. And so once we can connect all the dots, we can attribute spend to business value, right? So cost per integration, cost per process, cost per business unit, total cost of ownership for the overall estate. And this is a cultural shift. BizApps teams usually don't see Azure invoices, and so that's again where I see FinOps bridging that gap and enabling shared accountability. And I created some dashboards. I used other people for the colors that showed, where we were spending, but also I drove it back. We had a system where people said, "Oh, we can't work out how much spend we're doing," but I could work out how many transactions were going through the system, and so I just tracked transactions. Right, we knew that we spent $1,000 a month, let's say, and there were, I don't know, 10,000 transactions a day, and so you break it down and you go, okay, this is what we're spending now. These transactions are intrinsically linked to this value that we're delivering, blah, blah, blah. And again, being able to bring that together means that we can enable that shared accountability. Automation, basically my middle name. Governance, not so much. FinOps, and in fact, our industry should thrive on automation. So, can we automate some of the license cleanup scripts or auditing? Of course, environment auto expiration, looking at refresh optimization, if we have overrun detection, that's going to help us with some of our automation and stuff. Enforcing tagging and metadata. And if you don't like tagging, hi, my name's Hamish. I like tagging. So happy to help you. And the thing is, we can align our FinOps practices with release pipelines. And so some of this is around, policies and stuff, because we should not have an environment. So no environment, I had a rule where no environment could exist without an owner. No license was assigned without justification. And, being able to automate the provisioning of infrastructure via pull requests, right, be it in GitHub or Azure DevOps or wherever, means that we have accountability, we have auditing. And so, we spin these things up for a reason, and it's approved. We monitor these things. We have monthly review cycles for our environment usage. And again, we can automate all this. And of course, we're looking for, anomalies. So, if we've got premium connectors that are not being used, we need alerts for that, and we need to shut it down as quick as. I guess for me, all of this comes about for my second middle name, which is around culture. And the thing is, I know I've got the world's longest name. FinOps is not a tooling exercise. It's actually a culture one, which is one reason I started getting onto it for two reasons. One, every dollar that people were spending in the cloud, I could justify or reduce. And two, it's bringing us all together. So we'll just have a massive party with all the money that we saved. To succeed, we need shared responsibility. And the minute we say accountability, everyone gets all worried, but it's not like that. It's actually shared responsibility across, our IT function, but finance and business teams. And, it might be different for you, and I hope it is, but generally, business app teams operate independently from our cloud or platform engineering teams, maybe from the finance or business owners. And so one of the reasons why I is certified with FinOps.org, it introduces a model where finance understands how D365 usage is affecting billing. IT understands how architecture affects cost. And the business understands how behavior affects consumption. And so this cultural shift includes, transparency, cross-team collaboration, massive win there, and of course, my last middle name, continuous improvement. And the hardest part is never the technology. It's actually aligning our incentives. And so, for example, business units may want unlimited environments for all their testing and stuff and things. IT, I used to work as an infrastructure person. We want control and predictability, right? And of course, finance, they want cost reduction. Whereas FinOps bridges these competing goals or objectives by making cost visible and shared. And ultimately, the goal is to create a healthy, cost-aware culture where teams make informed decisions rather than accidental ones. Alrighty. So how should you start? Well, I've kind of broken this down into a couple of areas, right? So inventory licensing. So discover all your environments, identify your storage hotspots, map licenses to usage, build your first baseline dashboard that gives us that visibility. We then want to start looking at implementing, our environment lifecycle governance. We want to get people like myself to build automation for cleanup. We want to look at departmental cost allocation, not because we're coming at it with a big stick, but more so that we have a single pane of glass on what we're spending, why we're spending, and if there's any possibility to optimize that. And of course, looking at the API, key performance indicators, so KPIs for cost per transaction. And of course, we want to expand the automation because you can't automate all the things on day one. Start small. My very first automation activity for doing DevOps with databases was literally writing PowerShell to back up a database. And my manager at the time said to me, because I was really excited about it, and he said to me, "Isn't that what we pay you for?" And he was right. Like, the reason why I was automating it was so that it was in a DevOps pipeline. And the thing was, that was the first tiny little thing I did, but we had great success because it solved a number of problems. Because at the time, do a backup, the application development team would email a help desk. The help desk would, or systems desk, whatever it's called, would back up the database. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with that. But by bringing it together with automation, boom, we actually had, a true delivery pipeline. And so my suggestion to you is automate small, automate what you know and are comfortable with, and then expand it. And of course, we want to embed FinOps into our change processes. I have a brilliant cloud engineering strategy where when we're doing planning within Jira, or whatever planning tool you use, we actually know the approximate cost of our cloud resources at planning time. We then go and, write the code and deploy it. And then we have a approval gate that actually looks at, is the spend still appropriate? And so that is where we're embedding FinOps into our change process. Because if we estimated using some brilliant code, I might say, that it was going to be $20, but it's actually $35 because along the way someone, went up a tier. We capture it as we're deploying out, which I think is good. So and again, start small, begin forecasting, adopt continuous cost reviews. This is not about telling people they're doing it wrong. It's more about collaboratively optimizing our costs. And so as you go along this, starting small, discovering things, identifying, mapping licenses, getting some dashboards, it's going to help you build momentum and, more importantly, show quick wins. So my wrap-up spiel. FinOps for business apps is not only possible, it's essential, and I feel critical. Because when we look at D365 and other business app stuff out there, they're actually mission critical platform for our organizations. And the problem is costs can grow silently unless they're governed. FinOps provides the visibility, accountability, and optimization practices needed to maximize the value of our investment in these apps. So treat your business apps as a multi-layered cost ecosystem. Use, those FinOps levers and buttons like license optimization, environment governance, and data lifecycle management. Build some dashboards that unify all of our costs together, because in fact, I'm going to do it, because once I find my mouse, this is Azure cost management, right? And trying to get stuff out of here is horrid. Whereas I would like to see a portal like this where we have, for say, our CEO, the dashboard, the cost breakdowns, because CEOs like that. Whereas, say, for our CTO, they might look at the cost a different way, right? But our engineers, we might want to do some AI recommendations to generate the Terraform for the recommendations. For me, this kind of dashboard is way, way better than this horridness. So yeah, build those dashboards. Focus on business aligned metrics, especially cost per transaction, because that's measurable. Automate wherever possible. Involve business, IT, and finance, because this whole FinOps thing, it's a team sport. And yeah, you're only going to save money if you do it. Alrighty, so I think I have a couple of minutes for questions. I am going to quickly just take a drink, so I'm just going to turn my camera off just for a second. No one wants to watch me drink.
I have to relay questions. Any questions? Because we're using the laptop mic. I've got a question. I've just started on a project where there's 21 dev environments feeding into staging environments and tested by UAT. There's a dev environment, and this is a major client, big client. There's a dev environment for every DevOps feature, and that's how it's been structured. It does my head in.
Yeah.
Is that standard practice to have a dev environment for every DevOps feature, or is it's just to do my head in? Is it?
That is environment sprawl, right? Because here's the deal. So all those features for the dev people, like I could how many dev teams are there? Sorry.
There's probably 20 of us working on it.
There's 20 people. So yeah. Do we have 20 dev environments for 20 people?
No, most of them are working in some of the same, because we're working on a particular project at the moment. So quite a few working in the same dev environments. Yep. But some of the others are relating to other features that may have been finished or whatever.
Exactly. So where I was going with that, and I managed to ensnare you in my trap, because
that's your middle name.
Yeah, I should add that to the other 12. So here's the deal. My opinion is there are environments at development level, and I like to think of them as development integration environments, right? So they're long-lived. They are spun up. They live for, maybe some months or maybe indefinitely. We'll talk about that in a sec. Whereas if I have a development team, say 3-4 people who are working on a feature, we spin up, that should be related to a feature branch, right? And we might branch off our little branches and then merge very quickly so that we do branching right. But that feature branch, might exist for a week or two. That's as long as that development environment should reside for, because we won't be using that development environment the whole time. So what I generally do is, if there is not a requirement to have an environment running on a weekend, I get rid of it. The reason being is because we're churning up a whole heap of money for no reason at all. And when we are developing, we may have a common source for our development stuff, and we might be, say, building locally, maybe, but some development environment should only exist for 2 weeks or whatever that feature is done for. As soon as it's merged and pushed to another environment, and we get the tick, it should be gone. there's a couple of reasons for that. One, cost, and two, being stale. If we just keep it around and go, yeah, we'll keep working on this, we can actually get code drift. I don't know how to do it. We should like, my opinion is that development environments should exist for as long as the feature is done and then gone. We should have a baseline, a proven baseline for what our development environments look like, spin it up, use it, and then get rid of it. And consolidate.
Excellent. I'll get my scissors out. I'll get the hammer out. I'm going to give Rich back a seat. No, you can.
Great job. Any more questions? Or are we ready? We've got a question. Hold on, we've got one more question coming in.
Okay.
Translate.
Hamish has sort of touched on it, but how does he feel AI is going to impact in this FinOps game? Both sides to that. There's the helping identify the problems as well as it causing problems.
Good. Did you hear that, Hamish? Or
I did. Yeah, I did. So the question is around, AI for me is an enabler. There are tasks that I have to do, and especially around cost management, that AI really accelerates my ability to understand data, because I have been the person who has had to pull down 20,000 lines CSV from a cloud provider and go through it. Whereas I do want to show you this. This is not a sales thing. Over here, I have built my own AI model called Ham Intelligence. And yes, I am a little bit of a narcissist. Ham Intelligence is basically me in AI form. And yes, it can be a little problematic. It can be funny at times. But anyway, so what I did was, because I would spend like 6 to 8 hours trawling through all this stuff. Using AI, I got that down to 30 seconds, right? So it's enabling me in terms of turning that data into intelligent sort of analytical stuff, right? So that's that one. What I am worried about in terms of AI is where we suddenly, say to it, and let's generate the Terraform. Oh yeah, cool. I haven't authenticated. No, don't worry about it. It's where we implicitly trust this AI thing, because we're like, well, it took something from 6 to 8 hours and can do it in 30 seconds. Of course it can write my code. It can't write the code. It can give you code. It can give you code based on historical code models. But in terms of going forward, we have to carefully, and I do really want to stress this, we can use it carefully to implement some of our change. Now, I like to see it getting rid of noisy alerts, but there is a whole heap of testing and governance and guardrails we have to put in. People say, hey, AI is easy, right? It's not, because to do it responsibly and to do it appropriately, we have to ensure that we have a great test framework and guardrails around it. Because here's the deal, it's like the best friend you never knew you needed. Because it's just going to go, hey, Rich, here's some code, go and run this. I want you to be like my best mate in the world. By the way, I think I'm going to pass out in a second because I'm getting too excited and my body's going, hang about, son. You'll sit. But do you see, for the person who asked the question, do you see where I'm going with this? It's great for being next to me, and I give it very specific, limited tasks to both automate, analyze, to give me intelligent response. But I still need to understand what I'm doing or what it's doing, because that intelligent stuff might not be as intelligent as we want. And especially for affecting change, be very, very careful. And the great news for us as an industry is that human approvals, human reviews are still needed for now. Anyway, sorry, I had to do the evil laugh. Alrighty.
Thanks, Hamish. Thank you.
No worries.
Thanks for doing it when you're sick as well. So really appreciate it. Yeah.
It's all
Go
good.
lie down.
I am going to. Take care, everyone. See you.